Good morning, everybody. I'm Bob Brocker, founder and president of AgeWise Colorado. Barbara Boyer is our executive director, but she's not able to be with us today. So today is our 28th webinar. And this one is, and I'm going to share my screen here now. This one is on what we call stories and stuff in your life. Exciting new ways of telling the stories of your life, your legacy, with your way in words, pictures, objects, preserving what you want your current and future family and friends to know about you. So this is number 28 in our webinar series. All of the previous ones have been recorded as this one is today and are on our website. Okay, today's panel, and this is a very brief introduction, and we'll get into a little longer one as we dive into this. First is Lisa Culhane, who is a certified guided autobiography instructor, and her contact info is there. Ellen Goodwin is the co-founder of the patent-pending mobile and web-based platform called Artifacts, which you'll hear more about today. And Maggie Gannon is the founder and CEO of Haven, an evidence-based clinical research software solution that assists care teams in supporting their most vulnerable populations. A little bit about AgeWise Colorado, and then we'll dive into today's panelists. We are working to become the premier nonprofit information embedded service provider hub for aging Coloradans and all current and future caregivers. The reason that we focus so much on this is because our population is changing very quickly. Our 60 and over population crossed the under 18 population last year. And that's a trend that will be continuing out into the coming decades, as you can see from this graphic. You can also see here why, we often call Colorado the second fastest aging state, and this is the reason why, because of all these dark purple counties in the state. Many people moved here in the 70s, and they're still here. So, and we have many more people who have moved in since then. We serve all aging Coloradans, all caregivers and adult children of aging Coloradans, employers who want to support their current and future caregiving employees, our vetted service providers, of course, and all organizations committed to healthy aging Coloradans. The two primary demographics that we choose to serve are, first the people in this sandwich generation here, age roughly 40 to 60. And then the folks who are over age 60. Total together, it's almost 3 million people, which is about a little under 3/5 of our state's population. This is a screenshot from our website that shows the categories of services that we provide. If you go there, you'll find there'll first be a very short description of what you find in that category, and then the subcategories that are listed underneath that. And our educational webinars, just a quick plug on those. We have the one we're having today. And then, as you can see, we have several coming up in the next couple of months. So with that, I'm going to stop this. And I will introduce our first panelist for today. And that would be Lisa Culhane. And I'll spotlight Lisa. Okay. Lisa holds a MLS degree from Georgetown University and is a certified life coach and guided autobiography instructor. She's project coordinator for the Center for Bioethics and Humanities at the University of Colorado at Anschutz, is a retired day-to-day mom and author who believes writing your stories is the key to discovering the lessons and wisdom you want to carry forward into your third act. That's why she's so passionate about supporting people in finding, writing, and sharing unique stories as a life and writing coach who lives in Denver with her husband, dog, and mini Buddha collection. You can learn more about Lisa and her quest to help people feel more alive and connected at lisaculhane.com. Lisa, you're up. We'd love to learn more about what you do. Thank you.
Well, welcome everybody. It's nice to see you. And I know Bob at the top of for the instructions asked you to turn off your cameras. I'm actually going to ask you to turn them on. because we're
Okay.
going to go through a mini Gab class just so you get a sense of what I'm doing. So I would love to see your faces. I'm going to ask for some interaction. And so I'm hoping that if you're up for it, please turn on your camera. If you're someplace that you can't do that, I totally understand. And I'm just going to do a short introduction of guided autobiography, which you will hear me refer to as GAB. And really what GAB is it's a method for exploring and writing the stories of your life. And one of the things I loved about it, and I took the class and then decided I absolutely needed to become a certified instructor, is that it's based on 40 years of research. And it's designed to help you write and share your life stories with others. And it's really an ideal way to put life events into perspective while finding new meaning in your stories. And I have found that to be true, not only for myself, but for all of my students who have gone through it. And the reason one of the other reasons I really believe in GAB is that you have stories to tell, but getting started can be so hard, like really, really hard. And I don't know about anybody else, but I have bought the books and tried all sorts of things, but without the support, it's really hard to get started and to keep going, even with the best of intentions. So GAB classes are designed to support and motivate you and help you write your most authentic and important stories by offering inspiration, time, ongoing encouragement, accountability, which can be important, and peer feedback, just to hear what other people are writing about. And that is one of the joys of guided autobiography. So why write your life story? I wish I could say it as well as Susan Orlean, but I don't. So I'm going to share what she has to say here. And in her book, The Library, Susan Orlean says, if something you learn or observe or imagine can be set down and saved, and if you can see your life reflected in previous lives and can imagine it reflected in subsequent ones, you begin to discover order and harmony in your own life. It's a way to know that you are part of a larger story that has shape and purpose, a tangible, familiar past, and a constantly refreshed future. And this is my favorite part of what she has to say. And it's that in Senegal, the polite expression for saying someone has died is to say that his or her library has burned. Our lives and souls contain volumes inscribed by our experiences and emotions. Each individual's consciousness is a collection of memories we've cataloged and stored inside of us, a private library of a life lived. It is something that no one else can entirely share, one that burns down and disappears when we die. But if you can just take something from that internal collection and share it with one person or with the larger world, on the page or in a story recited, it takes on a life of its own. And that's why I believe it's imperative that we write our life stories. It's just to share what's happened to us so that when we do die, some part of our library hasn't burned down. So I can talk about this all I want, but the way to really get it is to try it. So we're going to do a short flash writing example. And one of the things that happens for all of us is the sad stories and the funny stories rise to the top because they've had such a strong emotion with them that's what is easiest to actually remember. So we're going to use that as a way to remember our own little life story. So we're going to do a flash writing. And I'm going to give you 3 minutes. I'll chime you in and chime you out, so that you actually know exactly the amount of time. And we're going to write about a funny experience in our life. And it can be a bare bones story of a funny family memory. It can be a family joke that's retold in your family all the time, or was. It can be an embarrassing moment. We all remember those really easily. Stick to a funny one rather than something that brings horror to you. Or it can be something out of the mouths of babes. And sometimes it's easiest to know what to get your creativity juices flowing with an example. So I'm going to just share one. One that I've written about in the past is that when my children were very little, my children are adults now, but they were 2 and 4, sitting in the very back of the car, buckled in, and we were actually going to Zoo Lights in Denver, Colorado. And we're driving in, and somebody cuts me off. And out of my mouth comes, and I won't use the explicit, I like cuss word after cuss word after, I was like, you da 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 da, idiot, da 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 da. And so I used, it was words that my kids hadn't heard. The one they understood was idiot, followed by some other words that are not, shouldn't be used in polite company. And I take a deep breath, and from the back seat, I hear my daughter say, "Oh, mommy, we never call somebody an idiot," which was very funny given the words that I had used around that word. So that's just an example of what can be, that's both out of the mouth of babes and a funny family memory. So again, I'm going to ding you in. You have 3 minutes to come up with, there we go, just to write. And for some people, writing in this way can make you really nervous. Don't be nervous. This is just for you, just something that pops to mind. And go ahead. Okay, the timer is going off. You can't hear it because I put my phone on silent for the call. So, but yes, thank you, everybody, for indulging me in doing this. And I would love it if anybody would like to share with the whole group and or put it in the chat so others can see it. And we'll have time for 1 or 2 people to share. I'm trying, let's see. Olga, I think you were the one who said I've got something to share. So do you want to go ahead and do that?
Sure. It's really funny, out of the mouths of babes. And so long ago, my now 25-year-old son was learning to potty train. And so, it was really difficult. He was almost 2.5, 3 years old, and he still was not potty trained. So I would just beg him, please try to go potty. And so he was sitting on the stool, and he looked up with these beautiful big eyes, and he said, "Mommy," in his little sweet voice, "Mommy, the batteries don't work." And so when I want to mortify him in front of a girlfriend, I might tell that story.
I love that. I love that.
Be
Anybody
sure he
else
sees
want
this. Be sure he sees this
Batteries.
video, Olga.
I
So,
know, that's awesome, Olga. Batteries aren't working. Does anybody else want to share theirs with the whole group?
I will. So the most embarrassing moment, like as soon as you said it, it was seared, and it just like went, it was like a video playing through my mind. I was meeting President Ford and his wife, Betty Ford, and she kept looking down at my chest. And I realized and I do not have a massive chest thing, but my button popped open. I'm like, what else? And I was so embarrassed.
Maggie, the reason I love that is it was President Ford. I mean, we've all had that happen, but most of us haven't had it happen in front of the president.
Yeah.
So
And
I'm
then-
gonna
No, go, I'm
I'm-
sorry.
so I'm gonna move us on, but you can see how fun this is to like just sit and kind of reminisce and think through what might be a story I want to share. So how does guided autobiography work? It's a 6 to 8 week writing course that meets via Zoom or in person. It used to meet in person before COVID, but now everybody's gotten so comfortable with Zoom and almost always meets by Zoom. It's 2 hours, it's facilitated, it's weekly, and it's an online workshop. It's online workshops that are designed to help you find your creative muse and hone your writing skills. And then between classes, you write a 2-page story, which is inspired by a list of prompts in our weekly discussion. And some of the prompts, just so you have a sense of what we talk about, it can be forks in the road, my family, my childhood family, the meaning of wealth, my life's work, self-image and well-being, end of life. And that can be stories about, it can range, the stories can range for things that you've experienced or what you think about it coming up. Life goals. Sometimes we'll touch on legacy. What kind of legacy do you want to leave? And so there's always support and questions for helping you get started on this writing. And each week, you will share what you've written in an encouraging, confidential, and appreciative environment. And I believe this is the magic of Gab. And the reason I believe this is that our stories, while they are deeply, deeply personal, the feelings they evoke are universal. And when we're sharing with others what we're writing, we come to see that, and we come to see that all lives are important in that. So we're just going to look at some, I'm wrapping up here, but some life story titles. And that's another thing to think about. And this would be a really fun thing for you to do after our call today, would be to come up with what the title of your story would be. So some famous ones are My Experiments with Truth, Gandhi, Long Walk to Freedom, Nelson Mandela, Freedom in Exile, the Dalai Lama, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, Maya Angelou. And some of mine that I've come up for my own title to my life story are I'm Late and I'm Sweating, Hypothetical Arguments I've Won in the Shower, I'm Just Here for the Cake. And was that my out loud voice? That one happens to me all the time. I'm always surprised by what I end up saying out loud. So we're not going to do that today, just because we don't have time. But at the end of this when you get off the phone today, maybe it would be when you get off the Zoom today, it's not the phone. It might be fun to think of what your life title might be, what the title to your life story might be. So why write your life story? There's so many reasons. And one of my favorite points is that it activates your brain. And it does this by triggering old memories, which enhance neural connections in the brain and oxytocin. And so it's a really fun way to step back and take a look at your life. So in conclusion, when people are ready to write their life story, Gab is one of many, but what I believe a really, really positive way to sit down and do it 2 pages at a time. So it's really simple. And as you gather those 2 pages at a time, they end up really telling the story of your life. So thanks. And I will unshare my screen and pass the baton.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. That was great. So our next speaker is Ellen Goodwin. Ellen Goodwin is the co-founder of the patent pending mobile and web-based platform Artifacts, which we've already said that. She's mother to an almost teen, which means she's almost 25. Wife to a cyclist and a cyclist herself, a lover of books, travel, and attempts to beautifying her home and garden. Prior to co-founding Artifacts, Ellen managed strategic partnerships and client relations for a global data technology company. And what she didn't add here was one of them was called the CIA. So, because I've never met anybody that actually worked for the CIA. So, and now you get a chance to do that here today. Okay, so Ellen, tell us about Artifacts.
Thank you, Bob. Guilty as charged. I am CIA born and raised, so to speak, in my professional career. And that's actually where I met my co-founder, Heather. She and I went through the training program there together. So it's in our roots and it's in the DNA of how we built Artifacts, because privacy and security had to come first. We had the advantage of building Artifacts while all of the social media giants were on Capitol Hill defending their practices. And we had the joy of connecting with researchers, actually some at the University in Boulder, as well as talking with people who are working on funded research through the National Institute for Aging, including on reminiscence therapy and things like that. So, we built Artifacts out of a need, which I think is, the mother of invention, they say. And what we've built, my co-founder, her mother passed away unexpectedly. She was only 65 and she left her with a whole house full of, you guessed it, stuff. As the eldest and the only girl, her brother said, yep, you figured that out. And it was really a shame because it wasn't the stuff that they wanted, right? But someone had to deal with that. But they really wanted the stories and the memories and to know what to keep of their mother. And so out of that need came Artifacts. And as Bob told you, we have a mobile app as well as a website where you can visit. That's Artifacts without the second A. And what you can do is capture the stories, the memories, the history behind the objects of your life. I'm really happy to be able to show you this today, especially to follow on to Lisa's great presentation, because part of what we're trying to do is make stories and memories and all that history less daunting to capture, right? So in doing our market research, we really found that people stumble on the stories, as Lisa talked about, and we needed to find a way, how can we make it as simple as social media to get started? And part of that is about the objects that we all have around us. They immediately diffuse the anxiety that some people can feel about telling a story because it's outside themselves. You can say, well, what is it? It's a pin. Where'd you get it? Oh, my dad gave it to me. What does it say? It says moody, but cute. And there's certainly a story there. But by using the object, you can make it less personal and help people have a story unfold very naturally. So what I'm going to do with my time today is actually give you a little inside view of our platform. And I actually opened one of my personal artifacts based on what Lisa was talking about, because, when we tell people you can artifact just about anything, you really can artifact just about anything. And so here on my screen, you're seeing my passport. I actually artifacted my passport and some of the stamps within it as the means to tell my daughter stories about the places I've traveled. I've gone to some unconventional places, right? How many people have South Sudan in their passport? Not many. It hasn't even been a country that long. But I use these stamps in this passport as a simple means to tell a story about places I've been. I've been to Russia, which is, coming from the CIA, also very unusual. I've been to Istanbul and different places. things. But through artifacts, I'm able to capture that, and I can do it in 5 words. I can do it in 5,000. I can use as many words as I want to tell the story. I can edit that story. I can collaborate and invite others to add to my story, but it's always here for me, and it's in an easily shareable place. I can also download it. I can take it with me at any point. I can share it with others. I might even want to print off a QR code and stick it inside my passport. And someone, my daughter comes across my old passport, which is now expired and renewed. She can scan that code and up pops the story. But the idea was, how do we make it that simple? And that's what we've built here at Artifacts is I can click here and I can say, I want to create a new artifact. Great. Add a photo, add a video or audio snippet. We all have them on our phones. I have a million from my daughter, right? Here's her swimming, take 1 million. But we all have these photos and videos just hanging out on our phone, and they can be the inspiration here for our artifacts. I can also grab them from wherever I might have them stored in Google or Box or Dropbox. And then here we go. I name it. Just as Lisa's exercise told you, it could be something funny. It could be something factual. This is a bowl from my mother. I pick a category. I can even do recipes. It's one of our favorite categories because we see people doing it so much. There's a lot you can tell someone about a family recipe, who it came from, when you cooked it, what it made you feel, when you make it now. You can include a video of yourself telling everyone how to make it correctly. There's always those secret steps. But this is where you can say 5 words or 500. It's up to you. What is your story? Pick where it's from or say not applicable. And then here's the clincher that we found is more popular almost than any other, because here, our orientation at Artifacts, we naturally get you to the stories and the memories and the history. But our starting point is the objects, whether those are photos or recipes or physical objects like my pin. We start with the object. And at the end of the day, what the reality is that stuff today is a burden. We dust it, we move it, we store it, we ship it, we pay for it. But also on the future generation, it becomes that burden. It became the burden on my co-founder, who had to go through 3,000 square feet of stuff and figure out what to do with it next. It doesn't have to be a burden. It can be the source of our histories. It can be how we connect together while we're still alive, right? I artifact with my parents all the time. When I go home to visit, we artifact all the time. But now I can also think about, what do I want to become of these things in the future? And we've made that very simple. Maybe I want to sell it. My parents are about to downsize. This is a feature that's really helpful because if I say I want to sell it, I can also set a reminder for myself. 6 months from now, I need to get this out. We're moving, right? I can say I want to make a charitable donation with this. I might want to bequeath it. I have a daughter. I might want to say, here's her name. This is not a legal document. And we very, very much say this up front. It's meant to inspire you to think about what becomes of this next. Likewise, I might say I want to keep it in the family. There are things that people might not realize are precious to you or to your family history. We hope that you express why. The power of the why behind the object is what gives them longevity in your life and provides that everlasting connection. And one of my favorites, too late, I've already parted with it, enjoy the memory. A lot of people do artifact in order to help them downsize and declutter. In fact, one of our advisory board members is someone from the TV show Hoarders, and he now has his own TV show, Legacy List, on PBS. His name is Matt Paxton. And he came to us because he said, look, I've been doing this for 20 years. If I've learned nothing else, it's that if someone has the opportunity to capture the story behind an object, they can more easily let it go because we can't take it all with us, right? And that's why his book is literally called Keep the Memories, Lose the Stuff. And he's joined us because this is a tool that people can use to help them go through everything. So this is how you create an artifact. One of my favorite things too is the tags. Tags are infinite. You can create every custom tag under the sun. I see them all. They're very funny. Some people put not so secret recipe because then they make the artifact public and we all see the recipe. We see a lot of tags like I use my daughter's name. I use locations I've been. I use spring break. People use different tags to be able to sort through their artifacts over time. I'd like to show you another example that is kind of near and dear to me by going over into our articles by artifacts. We have a robust library of stories that we share. One of them from this month was about a woman who her family had no idea that during World War II, when she was 20 years old, she quit working for the family shop and she became a welder. Her son thought that she did it as a hobby, welding, that is. She welded the gate at their house and it was in the newspaper. No, she quit and she became a welder. On the back of this photo, all it says is where she was and when. And it said like the location in Illinois and her name and the year. That's it. Nobody had any idea. And that's something that we think is really powerful. Photos as objects are very powerful because they can't talk. I mean, well, they can. You can use AI these days to make photos talk and even move. But if they don't know the story is lost. And so we work a lot with professional photo managers who are trying to get people to unravel those stories behind key photos that they cherish in their life. And this is just one of those examples where we have, artifacted with this woman. Here's the photo that she had. Here's the goggles that she's kept. She's 97 years old. And here she is on video telling the story behind her experience as a welder for the US Navy. So in every artifact, you can have that comprehensive 360 view of a story, right? It's there in photo, video, audio. You can have supporting documentation. But the power of that is that it's going to mean a lot more to you than black and white details, right? And that's what we want to convey here and be able to pass on. Every artifact you create is private by default. I said how we're kind of building human media 1.0. Everything is private by default, excuse me. Now this artifact I made public, but I could also toggle that right back to private. And by the fact that it's public, I can share it into social media if I so choose, but I can also keep it private and just share with specific individuals and give them full control. I can let them edit, or I can just give them view access. This week, we're also going to be releasing a new feature, which is really important to our community and was requested last year. Starting later this week, you'll be able to also share artifacts in remembrance. The idea came to us that there is a power of artifacts in lieu of flowers. So those in our community who have been experiencing losses have come to us and said, people love to share stories. They give me things and I can't retain it all right now. I'm grieving. I can't remember it and I can't share it with others. I need a better way. Starting this week, you'll be able to share an artifact in remembrance. It will give a copy of an artifact to that person whom you share it with, and it will have a little black banner across the corner, and they will have in their private collection for always this story that you've shared about their loved one. And they will be able to access all the photos and videos that included as well. And so this is one of the ways that our system here at Artifacts is evolving. The other service that we're providing, when I say we're tackling stuff, we mean it. Now, I'm not going to become a moving company, not going to become a storage company. Nope, not going to do those things. But we're going to help people get there and provide the direction that they need when they come to us and say, I have all this stuff, now what? One of the ways that we do that is by working with some partners. So for example, if I had these goggles from this woman and I wondered if they might be valuable as historical elements, I could actually ask, what's it worth? This button clicked will then say, would you like to share this privately with Heritage Auctions? And they will, for free, give you an evaluation of this item. They will say, this item with the details you provided and on today's market might go for X amount of money. This is not a formal appraisal that you might need for insurance or tax purposes. You can get an estimate for that if you want one. The idea is much simpler. We want to ensure that you have access to know, is this family heirloom actually priceless? Is it worth $5 or $5,000? Because we can't keep everything, as we've discussed, and you may have a desire to sell something if you know it's worth $5,000 and you want to use those financial resources otherwise, right? So what we're doing here is providing the outlets for you to understand We're so glad you love it. It's worth $5. We're so glad you love it. It's worth $5,000. Now what? The appraisal side is important if you would ever decide to have something insured, or if you want to sell it, or you might bequeath it and there's tax consequences. Again, we're trying to help you with all this stuff. And this is one aspect of stuff, is really, what is it worth? So I'm going to close that here. I'm going to encourage you all, you can come onto Artifacts. It's free to create an account. It's free to create your first artifacts, and you can see what you think. You can also create invite-only circles here, where you can invite people privately to share artifacts with each other. We have a lot of families doing this. They're reuniting family heirlooms and stories. You know, my grandparents died before I was born, my grandfather, and I didn't know him. So a cousin sharing a photo through an artifact, telling me the story of when my grandfather became mayor, or ran for mayor, excuse me, was brand new information, but it's a way that connects us across time and distance and will live on. So I will pause here, and I'll encourage you to try Artifacts for free, and also to explore all of the assets we have here for you. We have fun tech lists that you can download. We have that robust articles blog, and we have all sorts of use cases that are inspired by all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ellen. And so what we're hearing here in these first two presenters is we all have stories. We often don't think of our life as stories, but they're there all the same. And one thing I'm going to add to the chat right now for Artifacts is a link that comes from the Artifacts profile on the AgeWise Colorado website, which provides a discount code if you are interested in signing up with Artifacts. So I'll plug that in right now. And you can also find it on our website by going to Artifacts, and you'll see it there as well. So thanks again, Ellen. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce Maggie, and then we will have ample time for questions for all three of our presenters at the end. So just hang on to those if you would, and you can ask them verbally, though there's going to be plenty of time. So our next presenter is Maggie Gannon. So Maggie is the founder and CEO of Haven. After witnessing countless patients suffer needlessly during end of life, and with a sudden family cancer diagnosis, Maggie was inspired to create a better dying experience where suffering is never an option. Haven is an evidence-based clinical research software solution that assists care teams to support their most vulnerable populations. Maggie is a board-certified adult gerontology clinical nurse specialist, advanced practice nurse, and certified, I can't pronounce this word, has something to do with your throat, otorhinolaryngology, head, neck nurse. And as a dedicated healthcare professional, her career spans over 28 years, focusing on leadership, program development, and patient safety initiatives to mitigate adverse events for patients with head and neck cancer. She's a widely recognized national lecturer and author. So Maggie, tell us more about what you're doing with Haven, please.
Thanks, Bob. It's a pleasure to be here as a guest today. I just have to say, Ellen, really fast, as you were explaining Artifacts, I'm actually assisting one of my elderly friends who happens to be a hoarder. And I couldn't help think, like, I got to do this, because I noticed that if I take a picture of something, she feels more comfortable with letting it go. So it's like
There's something there. There is.
oh, they're
Creatures.
absolutely. And it's going to make my life so much easier. So thank you. So, you know, it's so powerful to hear what Ellen had to say along with Lisa, because, you know, about 10 or 15 years ago, there weren't a lot of resources to help people in this space. So when I say in this space, it's, you know, these end of life issues, dealing with death and dying. You know, only 1 person out of 3 in the United States has any formal end of life preparation in place. And that's because in our culture, there's so many stigmatisms that are tied with death. It's like everybody wants to celebrate life, but it's different for death. And because of that, it sets all of us up, regardless if we're sick or healthy or how old we are, it sets us up not to die well. And this, ever since the pandemic, I think there's a little more, this death positive movement has been growing. And even for myself, it was something as a nurse. And Bob, the word is otorhinolaryngology. It's a huge mouthful. But, as I had the pleasure of taking care of this very vulnerable population, we would stumble and I would stumble when our patients would die from their disease. And I didn't have the quality of life interventions that I needed to make sure that they were prepared to die well. And it was something that always, it sat on the back burner. And it became really real for me fast when my husband was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. And this happened in 2020 as we were on our bikes climbing up Vail Pass. And he just wasn't feeling well. And a month and a half later, he was diagnosed. And it hit me like a bag of bricks, because like most of the people across the United States, I acknowledged that death was part of life. I witnessed a lot of my patients die from their disease, yet I never really thought that it was going to happen to me so soon, or the possibility of happening to somebody that I love so soon. And so my whole passion was to create a space where people who were sick or ill could really have that improvement of life by, looking at bringing life into death, really, by being able to take a step back and find purpose by looking at their life. And I love what Lisa said about, as she was talking about all the great things that come with a life review, right? It gives us the opportunity to reflect on everything, on our successes, on our failures. It provides the opportunity to start again. It provides the opportunity to look back and go, wow, I've done a lot and I've accomplished a lot in my life. To take stock and think about what I can do next. And those stories, they're so rich, even if it's a funny story like Lisa was talking, or it's something sad or whatever that is, those stories really, for me, they ground me and they fill me up with feelings that I belong, and especially with feelings about, knowing that I belong to my family. And it was always about the story for me. It was always about the story that rooted and tied me in. And I would sit on the porch when I was 10 years old and listen to my grandmother's 12 brothers and sisters talk about growing up in the early 1900s. So I was always hooked in that story. So enough about that. I'll take you to the website. So what I did, after my husband was diagnosed and we got him through, he's in recovery now, thank goodness. I put my nursing cap on, and I was really I needed to find a solution, not only to help, like I said, healthy people to create their legacy, but find a way to help care teams, help their vulnerable patient populations. So what I did was I created an advanced care planning platform for palliative care and hospices, and I integrated this with clinical research. And really, it's all about giving us a voice. We all have the basic right to die as well as we live. And this is a way to do it. And we do it through storytelling. So we know that with patients in end of life, they are the most vulnerable patient population with low quality of life and unnecessary suffering. So with our platform, we're able to not only help care teams improve quality of life, but we're also giving them a way and a platform for them to sustain end of life care. Because as you know, well, maybe you don't, there's a lot of money that's tied into taking care of patients, and especially those patients during end of life. They take a lot of time, effort, and resources from the institution. And our software provides a solution for healthcare organizations, not only to improve their metrics, but also as a way to generate revenue and retain revenue. So that's the application for palliative care and hospices. And then for the person, this is our landing page for anybody who would just like to create their digital legacy. I created a landing page where really it's a place where people can reflect on all parts of their legacy. So it's not just that life story writing, but it's also photos with descriptions of the photos. But really, it's a home, it's a safe place for people to create their story. We tried to keep this, I created from a gerontology perspective, because we know that, the older people get, some people have issues navigating with social media and on the web. So I tried to simplify it and make it as simple as possible. So essentially, we're the under one roof digital solution for story writing, legacy letters, and photos. We're adding videos soon. And I'm not going to take you all the way through, but these are some of our features. We have the legacy writing, and we have the research is integrated in our life review kiosk, where there's different categories to choose from. Because what we're doing with this platform, along with Ellen's platform and all these other wonderful end of life companies who are out there today, we're empowering people during a time where they feel powerless. So we want to give them choices. So, they can choose on the categories that resonate with them, and they can write about whatever, feels comfortable with them, and they can go back and forth and edit as they go. There's also a way to send living legacy letters to say things that need to be said, or maybe have never been said, or they've been said, but need to be said again. And with these legacy letters, you can upload photos and videos are coming of important objects or favorite family memorabilia, like those recipes, and you can tell the story behind that. You can send them to whoever you want to send them to. So, if you want to get that improvement in quality of life and you want to get that closure, you could send the letter now, or you could choose to send the letter after death. It's totally up to the person. There's unlimited space for media right now with photos and videos that are coming, and letters. And what else do we have here? And then what I love about this too, as a provider, oftentimes we would lose patients and we wouldn't know about it. So they would die from other things, not their disease. Or I would find out on Facebook that somebody I went to high school with had died. And that would just hit me like a bag of bricks, because I was like, oh my goodness, like I missed the funeral. I didn't get to say goodbye. That really affects grieving. So with this platform, there's a way for the person to decide if they want to share this out or not, but they can also specify individual people that they want to share their life and their legacy with. And then so that way everybody's notified at the same time, so everybody can grieve together as a community. And I think that's about it. And then we also have professional legacy writers and obituary writers, because some people, they're focused more on that obit part, and other people are like, it's more like what Lisa does, they want to write their autobiography. So we have resources for people to sign up for workshops to write and things like that. They can choose to donate with their financial legacy piece, so they can choose a charity that they'd like to donate to after they die. And then we have a lot of resources available to help people who, somebody like me, where my friend, an elderly friend, fell and broke her hip. Well, like AgeWise Colorado, I'm going to go to AgeWise to find out those resources. It's the same thing with end of life. So I just included a lot of these resources here. We also have affiliate relationships with end of life doulas. They're also using our platform not only to do that legacy work with their clients, but also to grow their business and to generate revenue with the platform. So here's an example of our end-of-life doulas, and this is across the country and in Canada. And this is just a list of the doulas that we're associated with and things like that. And that is it.
Okay, thank you, Maggie.
Sure.
Great tour of your website, and I've learned a lot about what you're doing just by listening. So thank you. And I had there's a question in the chat, a couple questions. I see. So from Rebecca, is there a feature on both these platforms for someone to use a microphone and verbally tell their stories? So Maggie, you first, and then I saw where Ellen has answered this in the chat, but we'll let her speak verbally in a minute. So
Yes, it's a feature that's it's after videos. So we're working on videos right now, and then we're just going to put that little verbal piece too, because a lot of our clients don't want to do a video, and this is a nice option for them.
okay.
Yep, I would second that. You can use voice to text just like you always do on your mobile, and you can also upload audio files. And included in that, interesting to observe, a lot of people will actually artifact voice messages that they've received. I often tell people, for example, my father artifacted the last voice message that was on his phone from my grandfather. So it's the only voice that we have of him available is through that artifact, but it's real easy to do. And we have a really robust FAQs to search and download as well to help you.
Very good. Thank you both. Do we have any other questions from anybody else in the audience or any of our presenters today? No? I had a couple questions. So you're all fairly, I think I'm speaking correctly here. These are all fairly new businesses. And so what have been your challenges as a business in growing your business and introducing more people to what's available to them? And I'd start with you, Lisa, and then Ellen, and then Maggie.
Well, to be clear, guided autobiography has been around for 40 years. So it's not really business. I've been guiding autobiography for about a year and a half. So one of the challenges that I find is that people are very interested in doing this, but they have a hard time getting started. And so it is finding people and helping people understand that time is of the essence. Do it now, because now's the best time to start anything, right? It's that old adage, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time is today. So make sure you're doing these things. I think I'm just amazed at both Ellen's and Maggie's the ability to help people get started. It's so simple. It's simple and do it. Just start today. And whether that's, if writing your story feels too onerous, start with an artifact. Start with something simple, because that's how these things build. And I will, if you'll all forgive me, I will tell a very quick story about an artifact. I've been going through my mother's things. She died 6 years ago, and finally have been going through them. And I found a stack of letters from somebody I didn't know. And when I opened them, I discovered it was the last person my uncle had died in Korea in a plane crash. And it was his best friend who had been sitting next to him on the plane, but survived. He's now in his 80s, and he's actually in his 90s. I just found these letters. I've been able to contact him thanks to Google. So get started right now, because if I waited another 5 years to go through those letters,
there's a chance he would have been gone.
Good advice, Lisa. Thank you. Ellen, did you have anything you wanted to add about starting your
think
business?
Lisa's right on the money. It's always time is always our enemy, and we always put things off. You know, I tell people, they're like, when do you artifact? I'm like, what? I sit at my daughter's swim meets for 4 hours. Like, I artifact then because I have a million photos, and I just do it then. But time is always our enemy for sure. As a startup, as a bootstrap startup, we don't have the marketing budgets of some larger companies, and that's a big deal, right? Getting through the noise and reaching people's inboxes, having them find us, whether it's social media or it's not like we can afford spots on TV, right? So I do think that the word of mouth is where we're dependent, and that, us getting out there now that a lot of the COVID restrictions have lifted. We went to the Roots Tech Genealogy Conference. I was in Israel talking about longevity and legacy technologies. We have to get out there. I would say from a business perspective, I don't know if you meant that, Bob, but I'll also throw in, we've started to joke. It's really not that funny, but we will have survived as a startup, a global pandemic, a war between Ukraine and Russia, and the second largest bank collapse in U.S. history. So what else? We're resilient as a business, but it's also finding great partners, right? We are not alone. The day we launched, we pitched to AARP and we got into their innovation labs, right? So we have them helping us on research and testing. We have great partners, whether we're talking about Lantern, which works in end of life, or national rarities or heritage auctions, but others as well. And I think that we're stronger together and we're keeping in our lane. Like, we know what we're doing, and we're going to focus on delivering that and bring in others to help on the rest.
Okay. Thanks, Ellen. Maggie, your comments about that question, please.
I think, and it's more about challenge on my mind's. I was listening to what Lisa said and Ellen, and my mind's going crazy. There are challenges, and it's a lot of networking and finding partners within the same space. And starting out local in Denver, the community here, this end of life space within Denver is very strong, and there's great partners just locally. And, being on podcasts and meeting people, across the country and across the world is also very beneficial, because that, I think, networking is imperative to get things going. And then I'm losing my train of thought. Oh, and about the piece where, finding people who really want to do the legacy work. That can be tough, because what I've found is you're going to have people, there's a subset of people, women mostly, when you look at the marketing data, between like 40 and 60, like, writing your legacy is the new scrapbooking. They love it. And you're going to find some people, they're just like chomping at the bit and they want to do it and they want to do it. And other people are just like, no, because if I do that, I have to look at my mortality. And if I have to look at my mortality, that means I'm going to die. And it scares them because there's so much fear associated with this. So this is a huge barrier that all of us need to work together to try to, dissipate that, because there's so much power in realizing our mortality. It makes choices possible. And it's so important. And if we can just get that message across, you're going to see this big shift to the other side, what, this is going to be fun to look at my life story. And then the third part of this is the people who want to do this are the people who are sick, or somebody like me who almost lost her husband, right? Because all I kept thinking about when Jeff was diagnosed is, how am I going to remember him? I don't have a story. I need time to write his story. And I don't know how much time he's going to have left, but what am I going to do to make sure that he still has his dignity and he still is enjoying 1 year, 2 years, or 5 years? And that's all tied up into your story. All those gifts come from remembering who you are and the life that you live. And it's very powerful. And luckily today, like there's a lot of companies who realize this. Artifacts, beautiful company. LifeWeb 360, that's another gorgeous application I just looked at. And I'm sure you're all, aware of Storyworth. But really, I think that there has to be some type of motivation to get somebody to write that story if they're not into that. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Yeah, those are all great thoughts, all three of you. So thanks for your comments about that. I would ask people in our audience if you'd care to make a comment, and that is about this. What one of the things that Maggie just mentioned was is there a new generation of people, or is it everybody who are more willing to think about and talk about the fact that, we're going to die. We all know that someday all of us will die. And do you see any increase in your families in the willingness to address that in the form of telling their stories, or addressing the fact that, hey, I've got something that's been sitting on my shelf for the last 50 years and, nobody knows why I have it. So would anybody care to comment about that? Donna, Melody, Olga, Jessica, Amy, who I think is actually Kaylin, but you can unmute yourself and speak up, please. No. Okay. Okay, so Melody says she's 35 and she's seen that shift among her friends. Okay, thanks, Olga, for joining us. And so Melody, so you're, is it a generational thing?
Sorry, I have my son with me today. So he's 6 months old and is a little excited about talking to all of you. So if he's vocal too, sorry about that. I think I've seen it. So I'm 35. I've seen a lot of my friends definitely have that shift in relating to seeing parents and grandparents pass away and really starting to understand what they're going to be dealing with in terms of managing estates and kind of managing the stuff and all of that. I work as a professional organizer who specializes in downsizing. And I still find that with my clients, kind of 50 plus, the idea of being comfortable with death or talking about death, or even considering like that they're not going to be here forever, is still a very hard thing for most of them. Sorry about that. I'm definitely seeing a shift for sure in the younger generations, and I'm not exactly sure why that is, but I'm definitely finding that for me anyway.
Okay, thanks, Melody, and thanks for joining. Yeah, and we appreciate now why you were on mute. So Ellen, Lisa, Maggie, would you care to comment about what Melody just said? The fact that the younger generation seems more interested in being able to talk about this. Does that, you see that carrying forward when they become older?
So, there's been lots of articles lately, like in the New York Times, about how younger people are more interested in that since the pandemic, because they're seeing their friends die. So they're actually seeing earlier on that, oh my God, death is part of life. And it's affected them to the point where, they're making their will and testament at the age of 30. So if there's ever been a better time, it's now.
Okay.
Bob, I would say, go ahead, Ellen. I would say that I think it really depends, like anything. There are people who have always been comfortable with death, and people who never will get comfortable with it. I also work with I work with caregivers of palliative care patients. I'm a volunteer and I run a group for them. And I think they run the gamut of people who are really dealing head on with death, when some of them are willing to talk about it and some of them not at all. And I don't think it's based on age. I think it is based on something else internal. And I can't say what that is.
Okay. Ellen, you had a comment?
I was gonna say, I think we have a unfair advantage at Artifacts where we have a lot of features that do support end of life, and we're, working with estate planners, we're working with wills, digital wills, things like that. I think the unfair advantage I'm speaking of is it's kind of fun to create artifacts and you can share them and connect. And so I think it diffuses some of that tension. And the oldest among us at Artifacts, we have, I would say our oldest among us are 75 all the way to 97. And they also are some of our busiest artifactors. And I think it's because they're doing it with other generations, whether that's their children or their grandchildren. And I think that is making it easier. They're becoming better prepared through the artifacting process, so they don't have to think about the fact that an artifact has multiple purposes to help end of life planning and dealing with stuff after death, but it has that side benefit. So I think we have an unfair advantage because we have people from 16 to 97 in our community.
Okay, thank you. Donna, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that when I was younger, I didn't care much for hearing the stories that my grandparents were telling or my parents were telling. I just recently turned 59. I'm very involved in the Parker Senior Center in my community. And so I have a lot of friends that are older than me, quite a lot that are in their 80s. And I think of all the missed opportunities. All of my grandparents are deceased. My parents are aging, and I'm really focused now on missing out on those stories. And so I'm interested in having them share those things so that I don't lose them, but also so that I can pass them along to, my grandchildren and my nieces. And nephews in that. So I'm becoming more and more interested. And so I think it just depends a lot, like you were saying, where you are in your stage in life and what matters. And what I'm thinking is I'm going to start preparing those things. So even though my grandkids may not be interested in it now, I'm hoping they will be someday, and that'll be saved for them so that they don't miss out on those stories. I see Ellen shaking her head.
Donna, you're gonna
furiously.
love. We have a story coming in a couple of weeks. It's kind of cheeky. It's called Storytellers Beware, because we're like, did you tell the story? Did you tell it more than once? Were they actually listening? Were they ready to hear the story? Those things matter. And they might not now, but yeah, decades later, and then it's too late. And then what, right? Time
Right.
is. I love how you're thinking about it. I couldn't agree more.
But the interesting thing is about the physical items like you're talking about, and that book, the Keep the Memories, Lose the Stuff. I am a minimalist. I don't like keeping a lot of stuff, but I am a touchy-feely person too. And so I have this vase that belonged to my grandmother, and there's no flowers in it. It sits on my mantle. I look at it all the time, but it's one of the few things I have of hers, and I cannot part with it. And so I'm sure there are other things, and maybe I just need to reduce the amount of stuff and just keep those things that are most precious. But that's hard. Like I said, I'm a touchy-feely. I like to hold it. I'm still the type of person that likes to hold a book. I don't like Kindle. I don't like reading it on my phone or any other way. I want a hard copy book in my hand. So it's interesting. I like the idea of Artifact. I love that you can do it multiple ways, that you can do photos, you can tell stories, you can share videos. I think that example that you shared about the welder, I think that's fabulous. How long, does that stuff, I guess, stays out there as long as Artifacts exists, right?
Yep, exactly. And we've built in legacy contacts. So you have a primary and a secondary contact. So if anything happens, they can notify us and they can transfer your artifacts or memorialize them as well. So that's all built in from the get-go because, or even if you quit, if you join and you quit years later, the first thing we say is, please take your artifacts with you. We think they're valuable. Here, click the button, take them with you.
Oh, so there is a way like to download it like to a CD or something like that?
Absolutely. So we return it
that's
in a
awesome.
non-proprietary format so that you can take it with you.
Well,
Absolutely.
that's really cool.
Mhm.
Okay, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for your question, Donna, and for your comments. Do we have any other comments from anybody before we go? No. One quick thing I would add is, we had a webinar a few months ago on talking about stuff, cleaning out things for moving. For example, if a person is moving from their home into a smaller new home, maybe it's in an assisted living facility or independent living. And as we were doing that, we touched on the subject of hoarding. And one of the presenters had pictures of kind of before and after pictures, of what's it look like when somebody is a true hoarder, and what's it look like after you clean it up. And the differences are absolutely amazing. Apparently, there's a lot of hoarding that goes on in this country, and it's hidden behind doors for a purpose. But I've seen it, in my own neighborhood with one of my neighbors, and it's not a pretty sight. Okay, so thank you all very much. Thanks to our panelists. And as I said earlier, this has all been recorded, so it'll be on our website pretty soon. And you'll be able to forward this on to other folks in your networks so that they can learn more about what all three of you are doing to help people age better and to help their families and to help with the idea of end-of-life planning. So we will be having another webinar coming up pretty soon on the whole topic of end-of-life. So maybe you'll be able to join us for that. So thank you all once again, and have a great day, and much appreciated all of you who joined us today. Thank you.